So you mentioned that one of the things you noticed after some years of Zen practice was that it felt easier to be this person with this mind in this moment. So even though you don't know how exactly that practice influenced a particular reaction or a particular behavior, do you have a sense for how you feel like that practice generally influenced that, or how it or what it did to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think at the root of it, it's an acceptance practice, and largely learning first in our meditative practice how to accept what's going on. So we call it the school of immovable sitting. And I'm sitting there and my nose itches, and then I don't scratch my nose. And I don't wish it away and think, I'm going to get back to the Zen stuff when my nose quits itching. And I don't, sit there and analyze it. How come I'm always so upset when my nose itches? I shouldn't be that way. It's just stepping completely out of language and being in pure acceptance. This is what's going on. That's it. This is what's going on. Because so often, we're at odds with what's happening and we aren't really accepting it. And it doesn't mean in life we don't take action. That's another time and place. It's just the fact that so much of the time we don't realize how much we aren't accepting. We aren't accepting another person. We aren't accepting, what's actually happening. And in so many cases in life, you can't change what's happening right now. What's happening is happening. And maybe you can make a small dent in it, or maybe you can walk away from it, or what have you. But you're in a conversation and the other person's saying stuff you don't think they should be saying. What are you going to do? And there's a way of holding what's happening in this moment that somehow or another increases the internal emotional reservoir, if you will, what you can hold. That emotional reservoir starts to expand through an acceptance practice. And so you notice that what bothers you just doesn't ruin your day for quite as long as it used to. You know, it's like when I always give the example about when you're 5 and you're eating an ice cream cone, or maybe you're 3 and you have an ice cream cone, and the ice cream falls off into a ditch, into a bunch of gravel, and it's ruined, and when that happens, your perspective, your emotional reservoir at 3 is so limited that, the whole world is over, and you'd push a button to end the world right then if you could, it's done. Your toys don't exist, your parents don't exist. It's just like the world is awful, and the only thing that exists is awfulness. And I love ice cream, and if I drop my ice cream cone now, I'm still bummed out. But it just doesn't overwhelm me the same way. It's the exact same thing. And so, through this practice, I come back in contact with, people that I know that have been difficult people in my life, and somehow or another, I can now think and talk to them at the same time, which I didn't used to be able to. Or, the difficult thing happens at work, and somehow or another, even though I might be unsettled by what's happening, the degree of unsettledness is just surrounded by other things, and the emotional reservoir to hold what's going on has somehow or another expanded. How it actually works, no one really knows, but this has been studied for about 2,000 years, that sitting in the midst of what's going on with pure acceptance, or at least the intention to, hones something inside that allows us to learn how to be in the middle of what's unfolding without having to look away from it or go to war with it, to actually be able to meet it. And that does something inside that is calming. There's something that happens through the acceptance practice and the daily, training that we do in the monastery that allows that, through the emotional reservoir expanding, through, this acceptance practice, there is a calming that takes place, and an inner calming. And what happens when we're calm? When we're calm, we learn better, we hear better, we're more curious, we're less afraid, and when we're calm, we can see better. You know, the the storm on the lake quits happening, and all of a sudden the lake settles, and then it's like glass, and then you can see. You can see more clearly, like what I should do next, what I should say next. How do I meet this moment? The clarity starts to come through the calming. So that's in general how we've seen this practice unfold and manifest for people. But for each person, it's different. And the way that it manifests is different. And, that's a generalization of how it kind of unpacks for people. But the end result seems to be for each person that they are more comfortable in their own skin and better able to meet what's happening right now.